Welcome to Wicked Tales Unfold, where fear takes form and the unknown becomes reality. But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin with the story. The silent motel. The neon sign flickered like a distant star struggling to stay alive as Alex pulled up to the old Keystone Motel. The dimly lit parking lot was half empty, the air thick with the smell of aged wood and stale cigarette smoke. It was late, and shadows lengthened across the cracked pavement. After hours of driving through winding roads and thick forests, the promise of a warm bed beckoned. Inside the lobby, a bell jingled eerily as Alex pushed the door open. The air was cooler than expected, a draft whispering through the dimly lit corridor adorned with old photographs, grainy black and whites of families smiling in front of the very same motel. Behind the desk stood a middle-aged man, his face obscure in the half-light, with weary eyes that seemed to have seen too much. "Check in?" he asked, barely meeting Alex's gaze as he slid a key across the counter. The plastic keychain read Room 5. "Just you tonight?" "Looks like it," Alex replied, scanning the lobby. The worn-out furniture and peeling wallpaper seemed to echo stories long forgotten. "Enjoy your stay," the man said, his voice almost swallowed by the heavy silence. As Alex ascended the creaky wooden stairs, the chill that hung in the air seemed to intensify. Room 5 was at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. Inside, the room was sparsely furnished with an old quilt draped over the bed, a small desk, and a television that looked decades out of date. The wallpaper was a faded floral pattern, and the bathroom's tiles were yellowed with age. After tossing their bag on the bed, Alex decided to freshen up before venturing out for dinner, but as they turned on the sink, the sound of rustling caught their attention. Directly next door, a muffled noise echoed through the thin walls. It sounded like someone dragging furniture across a wooden floor. Frowning, Alex paused. "Hello," they called, but only silence answered. Shrugging it off as a simple issue of acoustics, they dismissed the unsettling feeling growing in their chest. Later, sitting on the bed scrolling through their phone, Alex was pulled from their digital cocoon by a sound that made the hairs on their arms stand up. A low, almost rhythmic thumping, as if someone was hammering against the wall. "Just the wind," they mumbled to themselves, trying to drown out the sound with music. But the noise continued, pulsing with an unsettling cadence. It echoed, blending with the creaks of the building and the sorrowful moans of the wind outside, creating a symphony of disquiet. As the night deepened, Alex made their way outside to grab some fresh air. The stars glittered above, cold and distant, while flickers of lightning pulsed in the clouds on the horizon. Standing under the neon sign that buzzed in protest, Alex felt a shift, a creeping sensation that maybe they were not alone after all. Returning to their room, Alex locked the door tight, seeking the comfort of the familiar. They sat down at the small desk and pulled out a notebook, trying to jot down their thoughts and shake off the anxiety. But then, a soft scraping noise came from the window. Heart racing, Alex stood and approached. Peering out into the darkness, they saw nothing but the flickering shadows cast by the sign. Breathing heavily, they returned to the desk, shaking their head at their own nerves. Just when they thought the night might settle, a sudden loud bang erupted from the room next door, followed by a series of hushed voices and laughter, an odd juxtaposition to the eerie atmosphere. It felt wrong, out of place. Alex could feel the instinct to flee begin to creep in, but curiosity anchored them. With cautious determination, they pressed their ear against the wall. The voices were too muffled to make out, but something darkly euphoric in the laughter sent a wave of unease through Alex. Maybe it's just a couple of guests, they reassured themselves, though the unsettling vibe felt thicker than the shadows around them. Then there came a whisper, low and urgent, "You shouldn't be here." The chill coursed through Alex's spine. This wasn't the voice of a merry traveler continuing the night. It reverberated with an ominous energy, a command wrapped in a warning. Without thinking, Alex dashed to the door and flung it open, only to be met by an empty corridor. Shadowy figures flickered at the very edge of their vision, but when they turned, there was nothing there. The laughter continued, hypnotic yet sinister, a call to a party they weren't invited to. Summoning every ounce of courage, Alex hurried back to the lobby, intent on leaving this unnerving place. But as they raced down the stairs, the man behind the desk was gone, his absence echoing the emptiness that had wrapped itself around the motel. Only the sound of muffled laughter remained, now mixed with an ominous thud. The main door creaked as it opened, revealing the darkened parking lot, yet outside, the atmosphere felt charged and almost alive. Just beyond the reach of the flickering neon, shapes began to form, figures merging from the shrouded corners, their laughter growing louder. Panicking, Alex fled back to room 5, slamming the door behind them. Breathing heavily, they pressed their back against the wood, the laughter growing near, like a crowd outside, beckoning them to join. One last glance at the keychain, a tiny piece of plastic that felt like it held 1,000 ghostly tales. Then the laughter stopped. Silence enveloped the room, so thick Alex could hear their own heart pounding. It was then they noticed. The rattling noise, the quiet of the night. It all fell silent as though the world had paused. And in that silence crept a thought, chilling and sharp. Perhaps the old Keystone Motel wasn't just a resting place for weary travelers, but a threshold to something far more unnerving. An invitation, a trap, or perhaps a reminder that some places belong to those who never left. Let's get to another story: the Forgotten Carnival. On the outskirts of Willow Creek, where the dense woods cast long shadows and the canopy filtered the sunlight into slivers, a group of friends ventured into the forgotten wilderness. They had heard tales of an abandoned carnival nestled deep within the trees, a place that breathed echoes of laughter and joy, now silenced by time's passage. With a spirit of adventure and a tinge of mischief, Alex, Jordan, Mia, and Sam found themselves carving a path through the underbrush, driven by the thrill of exploration. As they stumbled upon a rusted gate, the sign above it hung askew, the paint peeling in faded pastels. It read, "Wonderland Circus." The gate creaked ominously as they pushed it open, revealing a once vibrant carnival now overrun by nature. Weeds sprouted through the cracks of the pavement, and vines coiled around the skeletal remains of carnival rides, adding an eerie beauty to the desolation. "Check this out," Mia called, her voice echoing as she jogged towards a weather-beaten carousel. Its painted horses, chipped and faded, stood frozen in time as if waiting for the magic to return. The sunlight danced off the dust that settled atop the colorful figures, creating a halo effect that made the sight both enchanting and unsettling. "It's like something out of a horror movie," Sam mused, glancing around at the twinkling lights that still stubbornly clung to life here and there, blinking faintly against the encroaching darkness. "Come on, it just needs a little imagination," Jordan added, his voice full of bravado. He hopped onto one of the carousel horses, mockingly imitating a carnival barker. "Step right up, welcome to the creepiest carnival on earth." Laughter bubbled amongst them, but it was punctuated by an odd tension that hung in the air. As they wandered deeper into the carnival, past the remnants of game booths, a funhouse with cracked mirrors, and a towering Ferris wheel that loomed like a sentinel, the atmosphere thickened, heavy with an unshakable sensation of being watched. Suddenly, the carousel jerked, the aged wood creaking as the horses began to move on their own, rocking gently as if compelled by an unseen force. The friends froze, their laughter dying on their lips. "What the hell?" Alex whispered, heart racing as the carousel picked up speed, the painted horses galloping in a macabre dance. "All right, this isn't funny anymore," Mia said, her voice laced with trepidation. But even as she spoke, an unsettling laughter erupted from the shadows, high-pitched and disembodied, skittering through the trees around them. "Guys, we should go," Sam suggested, his bravado shattered. But even as he spoke, the ground under their feet trembled slightly, as if the carnival itself were awakening from a long, deep slumber. Fear ignited their instincts, and they turned to flee, but the Ferris wheel suddenly groaned to life, its gondolas swaying slightly as a gust of wind seemed to sweep through. They could hear the grinding gears and a tapestry of laughter, now seamlessly mingling with whispers that slipped through the colors of dusk. "Stay close," Jordan shouted, but as they darted toward the exit, they passed the funhouse, and the mirrors within shimmered unnervingly. Their reflections too fragmented and distorted to recognize as they moved, grins twisted and eyes wide with horror. They pushed through the entrance of the funhouse, desperate to escape, only to find themselves ensnared in a disorientating maze of mirrors. Each turn seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the carnival, the laughter escalating around them, wrapping tightly like a cocoon. "This way," Mia shouted, spotting an exit at the far end, but as they compiled, the mirrors around them rippled, distorting their path. They felt a pull, an irresistible tug urging them toward the laughing shadows at the heart of the carnival. With a sudden force, the walls shifted, blocking their escape. In that frantic moment, the laughter grew louder, swirling around like a storm. One by one, they felt fingers grazing their shoulders, cold, ghostly fingers, tugging and pulling, beckoning them to join in the festivities of an undying revelry. Panic surged. They sprinted, racing through the distorted corridors as laughter intertwined with their cries. Just as they were about to lose themselves to the madness, they found a single ray of moonlight streaming through a crack that flickered with hope. With one last effort, they leapt toward it, breaking free from the funhouse and tumbling out into the open air, gasping for breath. They landed in a heap, the carnival behind them a cacophony of twisted joy. The rides moving on their own, the laughter echoing ceaselessly through the branches overhead. Never again, Alex panted, looking back at the monstrous beauty of the carnival. The shimmering lights pulsed against the backdrop of the darkening sky, and for a moment, they could have sworn they saw faces within the glow, smiling, laughing, inviting. One by one, they stumbled away from Wonderland Circus, their hearts pounding in unison. They exited the forest, leaving behind the remnants of joy that had turned sinister. The only sound that followed them was the haunting laughter, fading slowly into the night, mingling with the whispers of the trees, a chilling reminder of the secrets that lay within the heart of the wilderness. Let's get to another story. The uninvited guest. As the last of the moving boxes found their way into the spacious yet dimly lit compartments of their new home, Mia and Carter finally began to feel a sense of familiarity settle upon them. The house, a charming old Victorian nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac, exuded an almost palpable warmth. They could already envision weekends spent in the garden and evenings on the porch. But there was an unsettling aura lurking just beneath the surface. While taking a break from unpacking, Mia decided to poke her head into the attic. She had always had a thing for old photographs and forgotten treasures. "Carter, come check this out," she called, her voice echoing through the empty halls. When Carter reached her, Mia was holding an antique box that looked as if it had been gathering dust for decades. After a few minutes of laborious prying, they opened it to reveal a stack of postcards, tarnished jewelry, and an old photograph. The moment Mia unfurled the photograph, a chill ran down her spine. It featured a younger version of herself and Carter, standing in front of the house, grinning widely. The colors had faded, but the expressions were unmistakable, gleeful, carefree, on a sunny day that felt almost too perfect. Yet as she scrutinized the image more closely, something lodged like a thorn in her heart. Standing behind them, half in shadow, was a figure cloaked in an aura of dread. Mia squinted her eyes. "Carter, look," she thrust the picture toward him. "That's us, but look at that person behind us." Carter leaned in, frowning. The figure was barely discernible. A woman with long dark hair that framed her face and an expression that oscillated between sorrow and malignity. "This is eerie," he murmured. "I don't recognize her," Mia said, gripping the photograph tightly. "We've never lived here before. How is this possible?" "Maybe it's just a coincidence," Carter replied, trying to stamp down the dread rising within him. "Old photos sometimes re-emerge from the past in unexpected places, and we just happened to pick this house without knowing its history." Mia nodded slowly, but unease continued to swirl in her mind. They spent the rest of the day unpacking, a thin veil of dread separating them from the home they had hoped to fill with joy. That night, after a simple dinner, Mia plopped down on the couch while Carter flipped through channels. The photograph rested on the table between them, as if beckoning for attention. "Do you think we should investigate?" Mia finally asked, breaking the tension that had settled in the room. I guess it wouldn't hurt to learn a little about the place," Carter replied, still focused on the TV. With a determined nod, Mia fetched her laptop and set to work. As she typed in the address, anticipation mixed with apprehension. The search yielded surprising results. The house had a rich history spanning back over a century, but it wasn't its past that captured their attention, it was the strange legacy tied to the previous owners. The last occupants, a couple named Daniel and Anna, had mysteriously vanished 2 years prior. Neighbors spoke of their quiet lives, but when they moved out, whispers of the home being cursed took root in the community. The woman in the picture, was it Anna? Mia wondered aloud. "Maybe," Carter said, furrowing his brow. "But why us?" As they crawled deeper down the digital rabbit hole, they found an old archive of local news that reported the disappearance. A photo showed Daniel and Anna, and with an icy grip, Mia understood. The figure in their photograph was Anna. Dark-haired and hauntingly beautiful, she stared back at the camera with a look that blazed across Mia like a flash of lightning. "This is too strange," she whispered, suddenly feeling the prickling sensation of eyes upon her. The following week passed slowly, filled with glimpses of oddities. Laughter echoing from empty rooms, shifting shadows, and objects mysteriously moving from place to place. They often found the photograph tilted on the table as if someone had been studying it in their absence. One evening, after hearing a crash from the kitchen, they rushed in to find a picture frame shattered on the floor. Amidst the shards was the photograph, now ripped down the middle, Anna's visage stained with ominous colors. Frantically trying to gather the pieces of what remained, Mia's heart sank as she felt a whisper of wind twirl past her, the air thickening with an electric tension. "Why here? Why us?" she shouted, but the house offered no reply, only silence. Each day became heavier as the ghost of Anna seemed to awaken and stir, a jumble of emotions steeped in years of anguish. With each passing night, she could feel the longing growing, the wish to escape whatever fate had claimed her and her husband. Mia finally mulled over the idea of reaching out to someone, a medium, perhaps, but she hesitated at the thought of inviting more chaos into the home. A part of her felt strangely compelled to help this lost soul, as if Anna's grief were wrapping around her, suffocating and entrancing. Days turned into weeks, and feelings of dread solidified into an eerie sort of kinship. One stormy night, while the rain thrummed against the windows, Mia stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom, suddenly feeling compelled to speak out. "Anna, if you're here, I want to help you." The mirror fogged over, and to her astonishment, a message slowly materialized. "Find us." Turning pale, she sprinted into the living room, where Carter started awake. "What is it?" he said, bleary-eyed. "The photograph," Mia said breathlessly. "I think we need to find out what happened to her and Daniel." "We're connected." With Carter's reluctant agreement, they began piecing together fragments of the past, using old records, newspaper clippings, and retired residents' memories when they could. The search illuminated the town's fraught backstory, revealing hints that Anna and Daniel may have succumbed to darker forces. A curse, perhaps, weaved into the fabric of the house. It seemed they were not the first couple to bear the weight of its shadows. Determined to lift the veil of despair haunting the house, they orchestrated a gathering at the first light of dusk one evening. Setting up candles and flowers, they formally honored Daniel and Anna, hoping to weave the spirits of those lost into the fabric of their new life. They lit candles, speaking to the air, sharing memories, and asking for closure, hoping to find a way out of the intricate web so tightly tied. Just as the last flicker of sunset dipped, Mia felt a rush of warmth envelop the room, and in the flickering shadows, she swore she saw the outline of two figures stand beside them, a man and a woman. "Thank you," a voice echoed, soft yet piercing. "We are finally free." As the figures faded, a warmth suffused the house, and for the first time since they had moved in, it felt light, liberated of burdens. The photograph lay before them, unmarred, as if bearing witness to the release. Mia and Carter exhorted spirits lost and found, and as they breathed in the newfound air, they understood that their connection that had begun over an unsettling image had transformed into something profound, a shared bond that transcended time. In the days that followed, the whisper of Anna faded into silence, but the house remained filled with echoes of laughter, warmth, and a deeper understanding of life's intricate, woven mysteries. Let's get to another story. The mirror's secret. The Allen family never anticipated that their recent inheritance from a distant relative would become a source of unease. The moment they unwrapped the ornate mirror, dust swirling in a golden beam of sunlight, they felt something shift in the air. Its frame was exquisite, carved with intricate vines and leaves, but there was something about the glass itself. Its surface seemed to ripple slightly, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a soft breeze. Initially, Clara, the youngest of the Allen children, was enchanted by it. "Look at all those pretty designs in the frame," she exclaimed, eyes wide with delight as she ran her fingers over the carvings. Her brother, Sam, only shrugged, mildly interested at best. Their parents, Richard and Lila, were intrigued, yet a sense of foreboding flickered in their minds. It all began harmlessly enough. Clara would often admire her reflection, and much to her delight, she swore she saw fairies dancing in the mirror's depths. But soon, the allure transformed into something eerie. The family began to notice strange occurrences. Sam was the first to see it. A shadowy figure in a wide-brimmed hat that seemed to loom just behind Clara whenever she played in front of the mirror. "It's just your imagination," Richard reassured him, though he couldn't quite shake the shiver that crept up his spine. Then Lila caught a glimpse of it too. A fleeting aberration, a dark shape dipping in and out of view, almost too quick to comprehend. With every passing day, the sinister presence within the mirror grew. The family began to see odd symbols flicker just before the glass would clear into a reflective surface. Lines that seemed to pulse with an ominous energy etched themselves into the mirror's frame, waxing and waning like the moon's glow. Desperately seeking answers, Lila turned to research, diving into old library archives and dusty tomes. Hours turned into days, and the more she stumbled upon, the more she felt the weight of dread settle in her chest. The mirror had a history, a tale of a lost artifact said to be a portal, created centuries ago to connect realms. The shadowy figures that danced along its surface carried the essence of those who had been drawn in, imprisoned inside the glass. Meanwhile, Clara became increasingly attached to the mirror. Her laughter echoed through their home, yet it was tinged with something unplaceable, a note of discord. She would spend hours by its side, talking animatedly to the figures that only she could see. Sam, meanwhile, remained ever wary, often peering over Clara's shoulder, feeling that some invisible boundary had formed around her. One evening, Richard returned home to find Clara in front of the mirror, tears pooling in her eyes, her cheek pressed against the glass. "They're sad, Daddy," she cried, pointing desperately at the reflections that darted behind her. "They want to get out. Come away from the mirror," Lila urged, stepping forward cautiously, but something held Clara fixed in place. The child's gaze was entranced, her voice a mere whisper as she pleaded with the figures behind the glass. As if sensing her distress, the mirror darkened, swirling into a deep abyss. The anguished faces of those trapped began to emerge, their cries a blend of broken echoes and haunting wails. In that moment, Richard knew they had to act. He stepped forward, determined to shatter the connection between their world and whatever lay beyond the mirror's surface. "Clara, we need to leave," he said fiercely, but she was still captivated by their faint whispers, stretching her arm toward the mirror's depths. Lila, panic gripping her heart, rushed to her daughter's side and pulled her back. "Clara, please. They're not who you think they are." The words struck a chord, and with a jolt, Clara broke free from the mirror's pull, her eyes blinking as if waking from a dream. Realizing the danger, the family gathered around the mirror, each of them holding onto Clara as Richard grasped a heavy iron candlestick. With one swift motion, he shattered the glass, a shower of fragments cascading across the room, catching the last light of dusk. For a moment, everything was frozen, the air thick with tension. Silence enveloped them. But then, the air began to brighten, warmth flooding the corners of the room. The shadows flickered, dissipating, leaving behind only a whisper of the past. The symbols that had plagued the mirror faded, as though they had never existed. Though shaken by the experience, the Allen family felt a sense of relief wash over them. The oppressive energy lifted, replaced by an air of tranquility that settled within their home once more. The mirror was gone, but in its absence remained a strong bond forged by their shared fears. They had stared into the depths of the unknown and emerged stronger, united against whatever darkness might loom beyond the veil. Clara tugged at her mother's sleeve, glancing toward the shattered remnants on the floor. "Can we find the fairies again?" she asked hopefully. Lila knelt beside her, gathering her in a comforting embrace. "Some things are better left in the past, sweetheart," she murmured. "But we'll always have our own magic right here." Let's get to another story. The vanishing town of Eldermire. Once every decade, under the ghostly pallor of the harvest moon, the small town of Eldermire vanished from the world, becoming a whisper on the wind, a memory swallowed by the darkness. The townsfolk had an understanding, a deep-rooted lore that tethered them to a pact made long before their time, one that promised an unwavering allegiance to the shadows. As the fateful night approached, a mix of trepidation and curiosity brewed among the neighboring villages. Tales of the town grew with each decade, stories weaving together threads of adventure, dread, and the allure of the unknown. Those who had crossed into Eldermire's borders on the final night were said to be spirited away, leaving no trace of their existence, only echoes of laughter and whispers of fear. This year, however, fear took a backseat to the spirit of adventure in the heart of a young woman named Clara. Having grown up hearing the stories from her grandmother, a survivor of Eldermeyer's last passage, Clara was determined to uncover the truth for herself. Clutching a faded map and armed with nothing but a sense of purpose, she set out for the mysterious town as dusk began to shroud the land. The path to Eldermeyer wound through a dense forest, with twisted branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. As she neared her destination, an unnatural silence blanketed the woods, broken only by her own heartbeat drumming in her ears. The air grew thick with anticipation, and Clara felt the once jovial tales morph into a dread of the unknown. At last, she reached the town limits, marked by a sign that read, "Welcome to Eldermeyer." The moment she stepped across the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. An overwhelming sensation of being both watched and untouched enveloped her. The town itself appeared frozen in time, with houses painted in faded pastels standing like sentinels against the night. The cobblestone streets glistened under the moonlight, whispering secrets of the past that begged to be unraveled. Clara wandered, half expecting to smell the delicious pastries that had graced the town's bakery or hear the laughter of children playing in the square. Yet, the stillness remained, an eerily beautiful silence that seemed to mock her desire for companionship. Determined to trace her grandmother's footsteps, Clara made her way to the town square, where a grand oak tree towered majestically, its gnarled branches embracing the sky. As the clock in the church steeple tolled midnight, a chilling wind swept through the square, sending a shiver down Clara's spine. The air crackled with energy and a fellowship of glowing lights began to flicker into existence. Soft, spectral orbs that danced through the streets, illuminating the darkened corners of Eldermeyer. Clara instinctively knew she was not alone. The town was alive, albeit in a way that bucked the very laws of nature. "Welcome back," a voice whispered from behind the oak, soft yet resonant, echoing deep within her being. Clara turned to find a figure emerging from the shadows. Tall and ethereal, the figure wore a flowing gown that shimmered as if woven from moonlight itself. "I am Elowen, guardian of Eldermeyer. You have come to remember what others have forgotten." Clara stepped forward, her heart racing. "I'm here to understand," she replied. "Why does the town disappear? What happens to those who visit?" Elowen's gaze held both sorrow and wisdom. "We are bound by an ancient covenant, a sacrifice to the realms that exist beyond your own. Every 10 years, Eldermeyer must retreat into the folds of time, a cleansing of sorts. Those who choose to stay on this night understand the price of knowledge, an eternity spent joining the very shadows they seek to comprehend." Clara gasped, suddenly aware of the vibrancy around her dulling with every heartbeat. "I cannot stay. My family needs me." She fought against the pull, the enchantment of Eldermeyer threatening to ensnare her soul. Elowen's features softened. "We do not force the choice, dear one. But remember, knowledge has its cost. You must decide. If you choose to leave, your memories of this night will be severed, rendered to mere echoes of lost dreams." Clara drew a breath, looking back at the flickering lights that promised wonder, beauty, and the thrill of the unknown. But the warmth of her family, the laughter that echoed through their home, pulled her back. "No," she said resolutely. "I cannot forsake them. I choose to go." As dawn broke over Eldermeyer, the vibrant lights began to dim, fading into the dawn's embrace. Clara felt herself being drawn back, the town fading before her eyes like mist. In a blink, she found herself back on the forest path, heart pounding, fragments of Eldermeyer splintering away like the final notes of a distant song. Though she had returned to her world, Clara soon realized the true cost of her decision. The memories of the town and its spectral guardians blurred like echoes from a dream upon waking. Yet, deep in her soul lingered a whisper, a reminder of the mysteries she had glimpsed. Eldermeyer would keep its secrets, waiting patiently for the next inquisitive heart brave enough to venture into the shadows when the moon hung low in the sky. And so, once every decade, the town would vanish without a trace, weaving its tale into the fabric of time, reminding the world just how thin the veil is between the known and the unknown. Let's get to another story. The voices below Emma had always been drawn to old houses, the way their creaking floorboards whispered secrets of 100 lifetimes. When she purchased the Victorian house on Willow Lane, she reveled in its charm, its dusty nooks, and the stories waiting to unfold. But as the days passed, a different kind of whisper began echoing through the halls. A sound that made her skin prickle. At first, it was merely a soft, barely audible murmur that fluttered through the air, blending in with the sounds of settling wood and the occasional scuttle of mice. But as the sun sank each evening, the whispers grew bolder, layering themselves into a cacophony of indistinguishable voices that seemed to seep from beneath the floorboards. Emma tried to convince herself that it was just the house adjusting, the way it did while she settled in. Yet, as the nights wore on, the whispers escalated, filling her with dread. One evening, emboldened by a mix of curiosity and fear, Emma held her breath and pressed her ear against the worn wooden floor. The noise morphed into a single, urgent plea. It was faint, but she could discern a word woven amidst the chaos. Help. Heart-pounding, Emma felt a chill creep up her spine. It wasn't just the ramblings of some restless spirit. There was something more to it. She sprang to her feet, her resolve hardening. She had to find out where it was coming from. Kneeling on the floor in the dim light of the parlor, Emma pried up a loose board. Dust and darkness greeted her, but what she found beneath sent her heart racing. A trapdoor, worn and tarnished, was half buried in the dirt. Shadowed edges hinted at something sinister lurking beneath. With trembling hands, she grasped the cold iron handle and heaved it open. The door creaked ominously, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into an abyss of darkness. With a lamp in hand, she descended slowly, each step echoing like a drumbeat in the stillness. The air grew damp and heavy, tinged with the earthy smell of decay. The whispers became clearer, more insistent, guiding her down deeper into the unknown. At the bottom of the stairs, Emma found herself in a small, strangely preserved cellar. The walls were lined with old, tattered portraits that seemed to watch her, their eyes glinting with secrets. In the center of the room stood an altar, crudely assembled from scrap wood and adorned with trinkets, family heirlooms, locket watches, and photographs, all half buried in dust but undeniably significant. As she approached, the whispers surged into a frenzied chorus, each voice vying for dominance in her mind. "Release us," they begged. "Set us free." Frantically, Emma sifted through the items on the altar. Her heart raced as she recognized one photograph, a faded image of a family she had researched upon moving in. The last occupants of the house had vanished decades ago, leaving only hushed rumors and speculation behind. She felt a pang of sorrow. These were their voices, trapped and tormented. But as she scanned the altar, something else caught her eye, a small, glistening ornament that resembled a key. Emma hesitated, contemplating the gravity of what she was about to do. The whispers encircled her, begging for release, flooding her with a sense of urgency that felt unshakable. She reached for the key, its surface warm under her fingertips, and suddenly, a freezing wind swirled through the cellar, extinguishing her lamp in a swift gust. Darkness engulfed her, and the whispers rose, nearly deafening in their intensity. In the pitch blackness, she felt the key vibrate in her grip as though it were alive, urging her to act. Moments stretched into eternity until she heard a soft thud. Seizing the moment, she struck a match, the tiny flame flickering to life in her trembling hands. Before her stood a shadowy figure, formless yet unmistakably human. The entity gestured towards a locked box at the far corner of the room. Heart racing, Emma understood. The key belonged to that box. Without thinking, she crossed the cellar, her hand still guided by the whispers echoing in her mind. She unlocked it and opened the lid. What lay inside was no treasure, but a collection of objects that pulsated with a dark aura, vials filled with what looked like ancient blood, rusty chains, and blinked lights. The voices cried out, more desperate now, swirling around her like a tempest. "We are bound by this place. We must be freed." In that moment, Emma realized the truth. These souls were trapped not just by the house, but by a legacy of betrayal and dark magic, cursed to linger until someone claimed their relics of power. Appalled yet resolute, Emma knew she could not leave them to suffer, nor could she bear the weight of their torment. With newfound determination, she gathered the items and prepared to face the shadows of the house above. The whispers shrieked in exhilaration, empowering her. Together, they would expose the darkness that had claimed them, forcing it back beneath the floorboards where it belonged. As Emma reached the bottom of the stairs and began her ascent, she felt the strength of the voices with her, a chorus that grew with each step taken toward the light. The house creaked and moaned, but this time, it was her heartbeat that echoed through the halls, a melody of rebirth and liberation. No longer just a keeper of secrets, Emma stepped into her home anew, resolute to battle the darkness that lurked within. And this time, she would not be alone. Let's go to another story. The Masked Man. The town of Eldermore had always been known for its eerie quiet and balmy autumn nights, But there was one night each year when the veil of innocence was lifted, and the air crackled with apprehension. Halloween had woven its way into the fabric of the town, but it was the appearance of the masked man that marked the holiday with a sinister undertone. Every October 31st, as dusk fell and the echoes of laughter filled the streets with the joyous spirit of trick-or-treating, the residents of Eldermoor would brace themselves for the enigma that haunted their town. He was a solitary figure, standing motionless at the edge of Elderwood Park, a patch of land shrouded in thick trees and dense fog. Even those who've lived there their entire lives knew better than to venture too close. The tales surrounding the masked man had shifted over the years. Some whispered that he was the vengeful spirit of a long-lost resident, while others believed he was a harbinger of doom, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But no matter the legend, one truth remained. Anyone who dared to confront him was never seen again. It was this ominous history that made Teddy, a daring teenager with a penchant for adventure, all the more curious. Unlike his friends, who chose costumes of silly animals or princesses, Teddy donned a dark cloak and fashioned a mask adorned with skeletal features. He longed to unravel the mystery and bring back tales of bravery to share with his friends, only fueling their collective fear. As the moon rose high, cloaking Eldermoor in an otherworldly glow, Teddy made his way toward Elderwood Park. The chill in the night air sent shivers down his spine, but as he approached the park, his excitement overshadowed his apprehension. The masked man stood exactly where he was said to, an imposing figure against the shadowy backdrop of the trees, still, silent, and seemingly watching. "Hey," Teddy called out, his voice cracking only slightly. "What are you doing out here? Why don't you show your face? You're just a man, right?" But the masked man remained motionless, his head tilted slightly, as if pondering the audacity of the young boy before him. Teddy stepped closer, driven by a mix of fear and fascination. "You're not as scary as everyone says," he taunted, though his voice trembled. "I bet you're just waiting for someone to challenge you." As if in response, the masked man suddenly took a step forward, the rustle of leaves beneath his feet slicing through the silence of the night. The air thickened as Teddy felt an icy grip clutch his heart. Without thinking, he ran. He darted down the path toward home, glancing back just once to see the man standing still, watching him depart. Teddy arrived home breathless, the thrill tainted by unease. As he recounted his encounter, his friends listened in wide-eyed horror. They simply couldn't comprehend what had compelled him to confront the unknown. "You're lucky to be alive," one whispered, her eyes darting toward the window as if expecting the masked figure to materialize there. But luck didn't last long. That night, Teddy awoke to the sound of scratching at his window, a desperate, insistent noise. Heart racing, he flicked on the light, squinting through the darkness. Nothing but the swaying branches of a tree. He tried to dismiss it, but the scratching turned into a whisper, soft and low. "Teddy, Teddy," panic rose within him, and he bolted downstairs, heart hammering loudly in his chest. He found his parents asleep, oblivious to the growing sense of dread that clung to him. Just when he thought he might escape the haunting calls, he realized the whispers were coming from outside. Teddy peeked through the curtains, his pulse quickening at the sight of a lone figure standing at the end of his driveway. Underneath the street lamp, the masked man stared back at him, unmoving, his presence sealing the fate of that Halloween night. With horror pooling in his stomach, Teddy fumbled for his phone, hands shaking. The moment he turned away to grab it, the whispers intensified. "Teddy, Teddy." He turned back to the window with a gasp. The masked man was closer now, only a few feet away, peering up at him with unblinking eyes. Desperately, Teddy fumbled with the lock on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Realizing he was trapped, he turned and ran up the stairs, fear propelling him. He locked himself in the bathroom, trying to calm his racing heart. But from outside the thin walls, the whispers continued, building into a haunting symphony that echoed through Eldermoor. As the clock struck midnight, the whispers faded into silence. The world outside felt suffocatingly still, every second stretching into eternity. Teddy emerged cautiously after what felt like hours, the adrenaline boiling down into dread. Sunlight streamed through the windows, but it offered no comfort. When he took a hesitant step outside, the street was empty, normal, even mundane. No one else seemed to notice anything amiss, but Teddy's heart knew all too well the night's dark secret. The masked man had not just been a ghostly tale told to scare children. He was a weight that pressed down on the town, and Teddy had invocated something far beyond his understanding. In the days that followed, Teddy remained haunted, visions of that mask following him everywhere. He realized that he wasn't just left with stories of bravery. He now carried a different tale, one that whispered of silence and shadows. The masked man only appeared every Halloween, a reminder of the fragility of bravery against the unknown. And as the lights dimmed each year, Eldermore lived in trepidation, holding its breath in the silence, unsure if those who ventured too close would ever return again. Let's go to another story. Echoes of the asylum. I've always been drawn to the thrill of the forbidden, the untouched places that whisper stories from the past. It was a Friday night when I, along with my friends, Sam, Lisa, and Jake, decided to break into the derelict Whitestone Hospital. The rumors surrounding the place were enough to make even the bravest souls quiver. Abandoned for decades, it was said that the hospital was home to grotesque experiments, where desperate doctors sought salvation but found madness. As we approached the crumbling edifice, its once grand facade now masked in shadows, a cold breeze swept through us, biting at our skin. The air felt thick and alive, almost as if it was breathing. "Are we really doing this?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Come on, it's just an old building," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Besides, it'll make for an epic story." We pushed open the rusted doors, which groaned in protest, revealing a dimly lit hallway strewn with debris. The scent of mold and decay invaded our senses, but the thrill spurred us on. We turned on our flashlights, their beams skimming over the remnants of faded medical equipment and dust-coated furniture. As we ventured deeper into the hospital, the atmosphere shifted. The walls seemed to close in, filled with echoes of distant cries and whispers that danced just outside our hearing. We explored room after room, snapping pictures and joking about the ghost stories. It didn't take long for the unease to settle in, a prickling sensation crawling over my skin. In one room, we stumbled upon an old patient's ledger, its pages yellowed and brittle. Sam, ever the skeptic, flipped through it dismissively. These people were whacked. Experiments in delusion. Who even does that? But it wasn't long until we each began experiencing disquieting symptoms. Lisa claimed she felt a chill creeping up her spine, while Jake complained of an aching head. I laughed it off, seeking to lighten the mood, but soon, I noticed the darkness sharpening around the edges of my vision. "Let's get out of here," Lisa finally said, her earlier bravado stripped away. "This place creeps me out." As we retraced our steps, the lights flickered ominously, and I stopped short, staring at a doorway at the end of the corridor. Beyond it, I swore I saw movement, a shadow slipping out of view. "Guys," I called, curiosity flooding my voice, "check this out." Against their better judgment, they followed me. The moment we stepped through the threshold, we found ourselves in a dimly lit room that looked like an operating theater, remnants of rusted surgical tools lying strewn about, and then, it happened. I felt a cold presence wash over me, an inexplicable dread creeping into the room. The temperature plummeted, and suddenly, I couldn't breathe. The walls around us groaned, and from somewhere deep within, we began to hear whispers, frantic, pained, filled with sorrow and rage. "Do you hear that?" Jake stammered, eyes wide as he grabbed my arm. The voices grew louder, each one weaving into the next like some wretched symphony. "Help us, free us, revenge!" Lisa screamed and stumbled backward, hitting the wall. Sam, however, seemed entranced, his eyes glazing over. I tried to pull him away, but he jerked as if resisting an unseen force. Panic surged through me, my heart thundered in my chest. "Sam, come on, we need to go," but instead, he whispered softly into the darkness, "They want us to know." Suddenly, the lights in the room shattered, plunging us into darkness. The whispers morphed into agonized screams. There was a sharp pain in my chest, and I fell to my knees, gasping for air as visions flashed before my eyes. Faces twisted in agony, blood-soaked bandages, desperate eyes staring back at me, pleading for salvation. "What's happening?" Lisa screeched. "We need to get out, now." Instead of retreating, Jake stumbled forward, his breaths coming in ragged gasps, the shadows growing thicker. "Stay," he shouted, his voice distorted as if someone else had taken control. "They need help." It was as if the ghosts of the hospital had taken root in him, and I felt a surge of dread mixed with hopelessness. I locked eyes with Lisa, and we both understood. Escape was no longer a choice. With all my strength, I lunged at Jake, pulling him backward. The shadows pressed down on us, bearing down like a weight that threatened to crush our very souls. The whispers grew more frantic, a cacophony of despair, each word laced with vengeance. I felt the cold touch of invisible hands gripping my wrists, tugging me toward a gaping maw of darkness. They wanted us, wanted to share their pain, their torment. "Get out!" Sam roared, breaking from his trance as he stumbled back. With surprising strength, he yanked us toward the door, dragging us through the suffocating darkness until we burst back into the hallway. We ran, adrenaline surging, fueled by a terror we had never known. As we stumbled over debris, I felt a sharp jab at my side, a phantom pain, like a knife piercing through flesh. I looked down, but nothing was there. Just a trick of the mind as we plunged back into the chaos of the past. Finally, we reached the shattered glass doors, bursting through into the night. Gasping for air, I didn't stop until we were far from the entrance, falling to the ground, trying to shake off the memories of anguish that clung to us like tendrils. We didn't speak as we recovered, our hearts racing and minds spiraling. We had barely escaped, but had we really? Even now, I felt the lingering chill and, if I concentrated hard enough, the whispers beginning to creep back into the edges of my thoughts. As we drove away, the hospital loomed in the rearview mirror, a sentinel of the night. I couldn't shake the feeling. They were still with us. They would always be with us, seeking revenge for their shattered lives. Each night, as I lay in bed, the flickers of memories returned to torment me. All the while, I couldn't help but wonder, what would it take for the restless souls of Whitestone to finally find peace? And was revenge really the answer or a curse that chained them to this world forever? Let's get to another story. The lantern light the sea crashed against the rocky shore as Lila Montgomery stepped out of her rental car, the salty breeze tousling her hair. A dilapidated road stretched ahead, leading to a weathered lighthouse perched on the edge of a desolate cliff. The estate belonged to her late Uncle Thomas, a man she barely remembered but who had always held a mysterious aura about him. She could still hear the whispers from her family at the funeral, tales of strange happenings, shadows flickering at the edges of night. As she approached the lighthouse, its tall silhouette bathed in the waning light of dusk, unease settled in her stomach. The house had a certain personality, one that both invited and repelled. It crouched against the sky, a sentinel to the vast waters, the sweeping waves echoing bonelessly against her eardrums. Inside, the air was stale, imbued with a scent of mildew and salt. Dust motes danced in the fading sunlight filtering through grimy windows. Lila traced her fingers along the worn banister, her heartbeat aligning with the sound of the waves crashing below. She made her way through the empty rooms, each echoing with the heaviness of years gone by, until she stumbled upon a small study tucked away at the back of the lighthouse. Books lined the walls, volumes of maritime lore, old maps, and, most intriguing, a leather-bound diary crammed into a gap between two dusty encyclopedias. Her heart raced as she pulled it free, its cover cracked and faded under layers of neglect. Flipping it open, she began to read. The entries were dated years ago, penned in a hurried yet methodical cursive. The first few pages chronicled daily life, mundane records of weather patterns and equipment maintenance. But as the dates progressed, the writings turned erratic. March 3, 1965. The first light appeared again. A bright flicker at the edge of the horizon. I thought I was seeing things, the men laughing at old Hector's paranoia. But it was there. A flash that pulsed, not like lightning. March 17, 1965. The sea is restless. Last night I saw the light again, but this time it danced. Green and red and blue. It beckons the waves, and the winds, and there are whispers on the air, words I can't catch. March 22, 1965. The fishermen who moor here have gone missing. 3 boats departed the cove, only one returned. They won't talk of what happened out there. The Lady of the Sea, she looms large in our nightmares. With each entry, the tone shifted from curiosity to fear, spiraling into frantic ramblings. Lila could feel the weight of the man's terror as vivid images swirled in her mind. Shadowy figures emerging from the depths, an ethereal glow illuminating the dark waters. The warnings were thick, like suffocating fog. April 3, 1965. They come at night, not of this world. I have drawn the sigils and warded the windows. Still, they are patient. A knock came at midnight, gentle and persistent. The lanterns flickered, as if she beckoned me. Lila felt a chill run down her spine. She could sense the grip of unease tightening, wrapping around her like a cold, damp shroud. Was it really just an old man's delirium? She forced herself to push it aside, but the sinister charm of the lighthouse began to seep into her bones. That evening, the wind howled around the structure, rattling the shutters as darkness blanketed the sea. She settled in for the night but was restless, lying wide awake in the creaking bed as shadows danced along the walls. The diary lay open beside her, the last entry catching her eye again. April 13, 1965. I have made a grave mistake. Now they test me. Temptations swirl beneath the waves, and their intentions are unknown. Every night I see her once more, her eyes like glowing orbs, pulling me toward the water. Will I bring the others to sacrifice for my mistake? Compelled by a mix of dread and curiosity, Lila found herself drawn to the sea. She slipped on a coat, its fabric thick against the wind, and made her way to the rocky edge. Waves surged angrily below, crashing and retreating with a primal growl. The darkness pressed close, thick and oppressive, the salt air tangling in her lungs. It was then she saw it, a light flickering on the horizon, pulsing rhythmically. Her heart quickened as she squinted against the darkness. It was no aircraft. It was too low, too erratic, but mesmerizing all the same. The sound of laughter, joyous and haunting, twisted on the wind, beckoning her closer. Lila shut her eyes tightly, forcing her feet to remain planted on solid ground. However, curiosity clawed at her mind. The entries flooded back, warnings about the Lady of the Sea, the glowing orbs. It felt as if the light was calling her name, begging her to join. Suddenly, she felt something cold brush against her arm. Startled, Lila turned to find a figure emerging from the shadows. A silhouette draped in darkness, yet somehow beautiful, ethereal. The figure smiled, revealing impossibly bright eyes that glimmered with a light all their own. "Why do you linger, child?" the figure asked, its voice a whispering melody that slipped through the air like mist. "Join us. The sea yearns for you." Lila felt herself swaying, her body betraying her mind. But she remembered the words from the diary, the warnings of her uncle. "No," she murmured, her voice quivering against the wind. "I won't." With a terrifying scream, the figure lunged forward, dissipating into a swarm of shifting shadows that tangled around her like tentacles, dragging her closer to the edge. Just as she was about to succumb, her instincts surged, and she recalled the sigils described in the diary. Desperately, she whispered a protective charm she had learned from a long-ago memory. The shadows howled, recoiling as an invisible barrier formed around her, flickering like the lantern light of the tower. The enchanting glow pulsed once more, vibrant and defiant, driving the darkness back. Heart racing, Lila stumbled away from the edge and rushed back toward the lighthouse, the echoes of the night fading into mournful cries. She slammed the door behind her, locking it tight, and clutched the diary to her chest. The lighthouse would be her sanctuary from the encroaching darkness. As dawn broke over the horizon, the light persisted, a warning to all who dared approach the sea. Lila knew she had inherited not just an ancient structure, but also the legacy of its past, one filled with strange lights, restless spirits, and a keeper who had lost himself to the depths. And as she looked out onto the bewildering beauty of the morning sea, she knew that for eternity, the lantern light would stand watch over her, brighter than any glow from the waves, a defiant beacon against the dark. Let's go to another story: The Vanishing Children. The small town of Eldridge lay nestled between impenetrable woods, a quiet hamlet enveloped by a shroud of looming dusk every evening. It had always been a serene place, until the stories began. Whispers of a woman in white floated along the streets like tendrils of smoke, coiling into the minds of every parent, every child. The townsfolk claimed she lured children away with haunting lullabies and hypnotic glances. I never believed those ridiculous tales until the summer they came for my son. I'm Laura Bennett, and I had heard the stories indulgently retold at family gatherings, huddled around the flickering light of our porch. They were cautionary tales to keep children from wandering too far, but they felt as tangible as the rusted swings at the park or the grit of our dirt road. They told us the woman buried in white would emerge from the forest on nights she found most favorable, dragging little ones into her icy embrace. My son, Oliver, was never one to heed the warnings. In his 7 years of life, he had danced just outside the borders of mischief and innocence. It all began on an unremarkable Tuesday evening. Though shadows enveloped the town earlier than usual, Oliver begged to play with his friends in the park, where the last remnants of sunlight threw a golden haze over their laughter. Against my better judgment and the incessant warnings echoing through my mind, I relented. Darkness settled in, like a predator stalking its prey, and I stood in the doorway, straining to catch a glimpse of my boy among the emaciated swings and teeter-totters. 10 minutes turned to 20, then 40. The breeze shifted, carrying a cold whisper that sent shivers down my spine. The laughter had faded, replaced by an unshakable silence. I called for him, a panicked urgency spilling from my lips that made my heart pound louder with each unanswered plea. Clenching my fists, I dashed down the street, each step echoing like a heartbeat against the pavement. Reaching the park, my stomach twisted into a knot. The air was still, mingling with the faint fragrance of damp earth. "Oliver!" I screamed, breaking my voice on the last syllable. My eyes darted around, desperate for any sign of him. Just as despair began to settle like a weight on my chest, I spotted a shadowy figure perched at the edge of the woods. 3 indistinct forms circled closely, whispering. I approached cautiously, each footstep muffled against the ground, before I recognized Oliver's laughter spilling forth. The other children, wide-eyed and enchanted, followed the woman in white. She glided among them, her dress flowing like mist around her. Her hair fell in raven cascades, framing a face that looked both ethereal and terrifying. "Children, come play," she beckoned, her voice a soft lullaby that wrapped around my heart like a vice. "There are wonders beyond the trees." My pulse quickened. The whispers of the past surged into a present reality. Frantically, I surged forward. "Oliver, come back," I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. Instinctively, my hands reached out to grab him, drawing him away from her enchanting grip. He blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. "Mom, look, she wants us to play." I felt bile rise in my throat. "No, it's time to go home." My voice trembled as I pulled him closer, but the woman's icy gaze turned towards me, her expression a mesmerizing blend of disappointment and fury. "Do not take him from me," she said, her voice commanding, sending waves of fear spiraling through the gathering dusk. The children stared, bewildered, caught between worlds of youthful curiosity and primal fear. "Mom," Oliver whimpered, reaching for her. "No," I shrieked, gripping his hand tighter. In that moment, something inside me snapped. "You're not taking him." I took a step forward, the ground crackling with my resolve. "Leave us. Leave him alone." The woman's laughter seeped through the air like poison, dark and unforgiving. "He is meant for greater things, little mother. Do not think you can keep him in this mundane existence." With my heart pounding in my chest, I turned back to the children, my voice a hurried hiss. "Run. Get home." They glanced between us but finally broke free, darting toward the fading streetlights one by one, leaving only the echo of her laughter hanging in the air. In their wake, the woman launched herself towards me, her fury palpable as the frost wrapped around us. I clutched Oliver tighter, feeling the warmth of his small body against mine, daring her to draw closer. An unseen force spread heavy in the air, a curl of malevolence that seeped into my bones. "Don't you understand? They are called to me. I can offer them what you cannot, a world of dreams." She shrieked, the shift of her voice an unearthly wail that clawed at my sanity. "Stay away." My voice was thin, but I held my ground, unwilling to relinquish my child to this nightmare. The moment stretched out like a taut string ready to snap, and for a breath, the darkness swallowed her, the gleam of her white garment dissolving. Then, just as suddenly, she reformed, inches from where I stood, black eyes glistening with hunger. Fleeting thoughts raced through my mind. Would anyone believe this tale if I shared it? Would the townsfolk cast me out as another foolish mother consumed by fear? I couldn't let this be the last chapter of our story. Heart racing, I dragged Oliver back through the hushed trees, resuming our flight towards the mundane familiarity of our home. "She can't take you. I won't let her." Each step was a defiant proclamation. Just before I turned the last corner of the street, the darkness receded, swallowed by dim porch lights. I dared a glance back, but only shadows remained. I felt her presence linger, a specter that would not release its hold. Later, as I tucked Oliver into bed, I felt the seed of fear nestling in my chest. "Did you mean what you said?" he asked sleepily, the innocence of his youth grasping at my heart. "About not letting her take me?" "Of course, sweetheart." I pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. "You're safe. I promise." I kept the window tight, secured against the night's embrace, with only the crickets and the gentle wind keeping watch over us. As I slipped into my own unsettled slumber, I vowed to uncover the truth behind the woman in white. Tomorrow, I would visit the elders, scour the town archives, and take my fight straight to the heart of that cursed legend. For Oliver, my sweet boy, I would delve deep into the horror lurking in our town, because a mother's love is the fiercest guardian against the darkness. And I would discover what lay behind the myths that threatened to tear us apart. Thank you for watching and subscribe for more horror stories.